capacity crowd, the hardcore that battled through the floods. Well done. Yes, you aren't going to let Storm Kieran put you off, were you, for coming out tonight? Good to see you all. Thanks ever so much for joining us. And to you as well, welcome to this week's Live to Pitch TV. I'm Mark Murphy. Big thank you to our sponsors. As always, our main sponsor, DPS Tech. And a massive thank you to our other sponsors as well. All About Hearing, marketing company Ginger Pickle, Forward Floors, Come Hither Design, the Hudson Group, Sound 4 Pro Audio, Venue 16, Fred Olsen Logistics, John Keeble Cars Bramford, and now the Dove in Ipswich. And I think we've still got a few sponsorship opportunities available somewhere we can squeeze you in. Let me introduce you to the team. Make some noise, please. Former Ipswich England skipper Terry Butcher's here. Former Ipswich England star Russell Osman's here. Phil Ham from twtd.co.uk. Who's got another Paddington I see on your desk has emerged.
Yeah, I'm getting more of this, aren't I, every week?
Are, yes.
Yeah, the desk will sort of disappear under Paddington.
Paddington merch. Yeah. The hat is behind, so the hat is here, especially for the news later.
It's the news hat.
The news hat for later on. On technicals, John Parker, Richard Garrett, Mark Calver, plus our floor manager, Leslie Dolphin. And welcome capacity crowd once more. Thank you for coming out tonight. Now, a real treat. Our first keeper boys on the show. We've had all sorts of positions. Our first keeper on Live to Pitch TV.
There you go.
Yep.
Keepers coming.
Yeah, I mean, keepers are unique, aren't they? They're very unique because they can't play outfield, so they have to play in goal.
Do you know what's a good job? There's 5,000 miles between you and our special guest tonight.
Well, that's why I said it. Actually, to be fair, because I've seen him, and he's bigger than me.
He's a big fella.
He's
he really is.
Lad.
We love him lots. He's got a big place in our Ipswich Town heart. Our special guest this week, joining us all the way from Canada. Let's make some noise. It's Craig Forrest.
Canada.
Hello, everyone. It's great to see everybody. You're talking about positions. I thought I was
Canada's number one.
They're singing your song, Craig. Canada's number one. I love the shirts. Well done. The memorabilia.
Oh, yeah. I'm all kitted out. Yeah, this is the old centenary one, 1988. I don't think, Terry and Russell, they wouldn't even have got this one. They were
Never seen it before.
They left before we went all crap.
I'm intrigued by that goalkeeping shirt behind you there. That's the one that you had along with Clive Baker at the time, wasn't it? That shirt you've got there. Interesting colour scheme.
Very well done. Yeah, I hold them in high regard. Obviously, my shirts. I love them. I've given a couple away over the years. This one's actually signed by all the lads. I got that done. So I was pretty good actually at the end of the season, is just thinking about. Yeah, these would be great things to have in the future and to hold on to, and it's been great to have them.
Well, you're looking very, very smart tonight in your blue and white top there, that's for sure. Everybody was asking me earlier on, which part of Canada are you in?
Toronto at the moment. I mean, I grew up in Vancouver, or Coquitlam, just outside Vancouver. It's about a 5-hour flight from Toronto to Vancouver.
Any snow yet?
No, not yet. We're still, the weather's been pretty nice. We don't normally get in Toronto snow until after Christmas. And then January, February, March, April, forget about it. It's bad.
The shopping centre's underground, isn't it, in Toronto?
Yep.
They do have shopping centers underground, yeah. A lot of that you see in like places like Edmonton and Winnipeg and places like that. You live underground when it's freezing for 8 months of the season.
Well, it's pretty wet and miserable here, I can tell you at the moment, but you've put a smile on our faces tonight. And we've got lots to talk to you about, and I know the boys have got some questions for you, and I think you might have some stories about our legends in residence, Craig, because of course they are stuff of legend, aren't they?
Oh, well, are they ever? I've never been so nervous to come on a show before. I do my own podcast called Footy Prime over here, and we just whistle these off. And I've been like nervous all day coming on here because when I signed for Ipswich Town as a 16-year-old, I remember Terry and Russell were playing at that time, and they're paired up at the center back position. You know, and then you think about what they just come through, you know, the Europa or UEFA Cup winning as well as the FA Cup and finishing. And this is a top team that I was coming to and trying out. You know, I wasn't even signed at that moment. But the first game of the season, I believe, that particular year was Manchester United, I think was at home. And that was that was my first experience witnessing what it was like to be able to, you know, be Ipswich Town and play. And that kind of incredible atmosphere it used to be. And it used to be intense because of the standing as well, because it was, there was so much standing around. I think there might have been, I don't know what it was, I guess it'd be nearly 30,000 in there, but it was packed, and it was, the standing room was made a special atmosphere.
Well, it was a great atmosphere at Portman Road last night. 28,000. Who was there last night? For a cup game, a Carabao Cup game, 28,000, which is incredible. 29,000 the crowds now at the moment, boys. I mean, it's the kind of people numbers that you were playing in front of, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah, it is. It's nice, isn't it? It's good. The whole experience is brilliant. I don't see what Craig's worried about if there was a lot of 20, 30,000 in the crowd to watch the Man United game, because he's 6'5". He could see over the top of everyone, so he'd be fine.
You're not wrong. One thing, I think, Terry, you might have done this recently, I heard. Did you go into the end zone section and basically cheer with the fans and get it into that sort of experience? Because I never did that at Ipswich Town, other than once when I was trying out. I think, I might have been signed at that time. It was, you were playing in the Milk Cup at Norwich. I remember Steve Bruce scored.
Oh, hang on a moment. Hang on. Ooh, thank you.
Can't say Norwich on this program.
Yeah, you can't
Craig.
say that.
Sorry. Good night. You're out.
But that was an amazing experience, and other than that, I never did that. And I always think when I come back to Ipswich, I want to stand in the end sections, because there's no experience like it. It's absolutely fantastic. Did you do that, Terry, recently?
Yeah, I was down at Southampton, and I went along with my son and watched Town win 1-0. Although you do still stand, there's seats there, but you don't use the seats. You stand all the time. And I said to the guy next to me, I says, "Well, look, is everybody going to sit down? It's quite rude to stand up." He says, "No, where did you come from?" He says, "You just got to stand up." He says, "We don't sit down. We sit down at half time, and that's it. But after that, it was just incredible. But the atmosphere for me to stand amongst the Town fans, I haven't done that for many, many years. And you're right, Craig, because it is a great experience. I don't know any of the songs, but I knew them after the game because they were sung in my ear for about 6,000 fans. So yeah, it was a great experience.
Well, I'll tell you what, Craig, you'd be welcome to stand any time with the fans, wouldn't you, everybody?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not in front of some people, perhaps because he's a bit tall, but
You'd have to be at the back because you're too tall. We'll come back and talk some more in a moment, Craig. But it is time to talk about the season so far, sponsored by the Dove in Ipswich. And let's talk about last week when we played Plymouth Argyle at Portman Road. Or was it Leeds United? Because I don't know if any of you spotted. Did any of you spot my mistake last week? Thank goodness the PA wasn't working properly. For some reason, I announced that our first substitution, sponsored by Treadfirst, for Leeds United is. And after I made my announcement at Stadium Announcer, the team in there said, "Did you just say Leeds?" Oh, for God's sake, no. And have I been reminded of it ever since?
Well, we never heard it, did we?
No.
We never heard it.
No, thank goodness the stand speakers weren't working in your stand.
Don't expect it from a man of your calibre.
Yeah. That's your first mistake in, 100 years or something
like that? Yeah, something like that. But what a game. Phil, we'll start with you on that because you've been fairly quiet this evening so far. You make up for it now, look.
another rip-roar, really, 3-2 again. I thought that we perhaps weren't quite at our best, but obviously we got ourselves in a position where it's 3-1. You thought, comfortable, we should see it out, and I didn't think we saw the game out very well. I thought we were we still seemed like a side that was trying to win it when we'd, to all intents and purposes, already won it. And of course, we let in the second Plymouth goal, which made it a bit more nervy than it ought to have been. But I'm interested to see what Terry and Russell make to that, because I just thought we didn't really manage the game well in that period from 3-1 to the end of the game.
We've come a long way from last season, Phil, in managing games where we've been leading going into the last 10 minutes. So far we're doing a lot better than we did last season, which is a massive improvement and something that had to happen. But when you can go to Bristol City away and not be at best and come away with 3 points, and then you come home, and again, it's only 3 or 4 days later, off the back of a 3-week break, really, the international break, we got to end the game against Rotherham being called off. So they were a bit rusty at Bristol City. Then the Plymouth game comes on top of that one. And again, they weren't at their best, but again, we walk away with the 3 points. So we're getting a little bit more professional about how we go into the end period of the games. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. We're still liable for the odd mistake, but we're a lot better than we were. And I just think yeah, you know, a dirty win now and again is a great win.
Were you ever worried the last 10 minutes?
No.
No, I wasn't really worried. So what are you talking about, Phil? I mean, I was going to say, talk a load of rubbish. You
But
do.
I do think, I mean, I mean, it's you know, it's very difficult to criticise the team at the moment, isn't it? Because they're doing so well. But the other thing Kieran said after the game is he felt they showed some tiredness because of the game at Bristol City being quite close to it, and I think perhaps that's kind of why Plymouth kind of.
When you think of the game against Plymouth was quite, you know, end to end, fast.
Yeah.
The tempo was really fast, and they had to be on their toes because Plymouth were a good side going forward, not so great at the back, but going forward they looked pretty dangerous. And it, you know, I think the way that Town plays, they're always going to look for goals. They're always going to go and try and get forward. And it's very difficult at times when you're going forward all the time, so like 85 minutes, and then the last 5 minutes, you know, you're still trying to go forward because that's all you do. You're sort of programmed to do that. But they're learning a lot, as Russell says, and I think, you know, they're better than last year in terms of seeing the game out. And if you're going to win a game, win it 3-2 and entertain. I thought Plymouth were the second best team after Leeds to come to the club, to come to Portman Road so far. They did well.
We got away with a couple of things on the day. You know, I think the tackle on the edge of the box that could have seen Edmondson be shown a red card, and it could have been a penalty, or it could have been a free kick on the edge of the box.
Well, Morsey could have got sent off as well.
Morsey could have got sent off as well. Yeah, but that will balance out by the end of the season. So we were lucky on those couple of instances, but that'll get balanced out somewhere down the season where we will have the odd break here and there that goes against us. So take a while it's there.
But we always look like scoring, don't we? We always look capable of scoring
Yeah, we always
goals.
programmed to go forward. We scored more than 2 goals per game so far in the league, over 2 goals per game. And also, but the worrying aspect for me is that we've also conceded a goal per game as well, on average. So,
do you think that will come and bite us on the behind at some stage?
Yeah, but I mean, it's Kevin Keegan style, Kevin Keegan's philosophy all over again, isn't it? So.
I love it.
Yeah. Do you love it? Do you love it? Do you all love it?
Isn't it?
Everybody loves it. Yeah.
Or
It's
Joe
great to
Royle, of
watch.
course. A bit like watching Town under Joe Royle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But also, wasn't it great to get one over Plymouth? You know, we tried so hard
Yeah.
to
At last,
overtake
yeah.
them last year, didn't we?
Yeah.
And every time we won, they would win again. And so it was really nice to get 3 points.
And I
against
thought we probably deserved to win both the games against them last year. We did go ahead in both of them, didn't we? And we're a bit unfortunate, really, to lose.
Last
to lose one and
season's
draw
history.
One. It is.
Now,
So
you know,
good in the league.
last game's history.
11 changes for the Carabao Cup against Fulham. A strong Fulham side, actually. No great surprise that we're out, do you think? I mean, they were
They were just too
pretty
good.
strong lineup, Fulham, weren't they? And you know, the 11 that went out for us last night, they hadn't played together, had they? Let's be honest.
Well, I think that was fairly evident from the way that the first goal was conceded. But their manager, Marco Silva, said afterwards that they dominated from the off, and I think that was a fair assessment. They started on the front foot, they got an early goal. We never really looked like, until the last 15, 20 minutes when the game was already lost, never really looked like putting them under any pressure, and Elken got his goal. But, I mean, you can talk about the marking on that if you like, lads, as well, because that wasn't great. But, yeah, beaten by a better side, I think. A better, more polished, perhaps. We've got players coming back from injury, players who hadn't played a lot. Shawnee Luko started his first start of the season. Axel Tuanzebe making his debut, his first game, I think, since February. So, yeah, I think, you know, we're a bit undercooked. I think that, obviously, Kieran McKenna wanted to win the game, but I don't think he'll be too disappointed about going out of the Carabao Cup, because I think we could do without the matches. That game would come between the Norwich derby and Leeds in
Hang on,
December.
they missed a boo then.
Yeah, they did. I sneaked it in.
The Norwich word was mentioned. Come on, wakey wakey.
So I think we could probably do without an extra game. It would have been away at Everton, which is obviously a lot of travelling. It would have been a nice fixture for us and a winnable one at the way that Everton have been this season. But I think ultimately we've probably used the Carabao Cup for 4 games, kept players fit, hasn't it?
That was the priority, Phil.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the priority, to give players time on the pitch in a proper competitive environment that they don't get. There isn't a reserve league, so the next most competitive game is either in an 11-a-side practice match between themselves or an under-23 game. And neither of those is really going to set them up for playing championship football or a game like they had last night. And that was probably too many changes but the reasons were there, as you've spoke about. The priority is there to get those players time on the pitch.
When we get promoted, we'll forget about that, won't we? We won't care when we get promoted.
We won't remember the Carabao Cup in 3 or 4 weeks' time.
I think it was most disappointing to see Christian Walton get the Man of the Match award for Fulham.
It's very harsh.
That just underlines. Yeah, it was very harsh, but
Tony
but true.
Luca got it for 55 minutes on the pitch.
How many touches did he have?
You rest my case.
It was the Carabao Cup. It was a run-out, wasn't it?
It was.
Let's bring Craig Forrest back in again, all the way from Canada. Did you get much chance to see town, Craig, or not?
Well, in the last few years, no. Until this year, they do show us some games. Whenever there's cameras there, I think they were showing it on DAZN over here. So I was able to pick up the odd game, but not many. But it's an absolute delight to be able to see it. And then with town playing so well, and playing the type of football they are, it's really quite refreshing. I mean, it's been a long time, and the fans have done an incredible job through difficult times when it was just suffering. And quite honestly, it wasn't available over here, and I just sort of turned my back on not the town, but just not looking at it as often, and just sort of I was like going, where is this team going? There's a better chance that this club could end up in the conference than it would do in the Premier League again. And how that's just switched over, it's just night and day. The ownership has done a great job connecting, and one of the most important things I think when we were playing, guys, is that the community, and I think the club lost that for several years. And you have to be part of that. And as a player, you go around to all the clubs and the supporters clubs, and you really get part of that. And I felt that when I was a player. And me and Frank Yallop were the single guys, younger guys. So we did a lot of those social club places, and it was a lot of fun meeting a lot of people. So you basically knew everybody in the stands, and it was really quite something. And I think they brought that back, and with the team playing the way they are, and a young manager has just done incredible jobs. Kind of reminds me of. I wasn't around when Sir Bobby Robson was at the club, but I think Sir Bobby Robson was something like 36 or 37 years of age when he took over at Ipswich. So very young managers, very progressive for their time, and he's playing out of the back. And I'm just watching some of this football is really quite a delight. And I'm sure you guys probably agree with that, some of those statements.
We're loving it.
Yeah, Craig, can I ask you a question? Did you talk as much when you were a goalkeeper as you're talking now?
No, I didn't.
You're very eloquent. You're very eloquent.
Yeah, you've done the audition. You've got the spare seat now, Craig. So get yourself here for next Thursday, please. You've got the job.
I was too afraid to say anything. When Bobby Robson left, Bobby Ferguson took over. So Bobby Ferguson was pretty hands-on, and I mean, he was great when I signed with my parents and making me feel really comfortable with good landlady, which just an absolute brilliant turn of luck, ending up at Mrs. Bond's place, Beryl Bond's place on St. Leonard's Road. So growing up with her, and then having Bobby Ferguson as a manager was an experience that has not even come close to it. And even as a youth player, it was unbelievable because I was living with Frank for a lot of parts of it. And he was coming back from games and almost in tears, just taking a beating all the way back from Liverpool or whatever. And it was quite something, wasn't he? Bobby Ferguson.
He was.
So I'm sure we've got a few stories, boys, haven't we, to share about Bobby?
We have, and it was one with Frank as well on the training pitch. And I know you've got a story. Craig's got a story about that as well, but I don't know if it's the same one where we're practicing. We're just in between different sort of sessions, and there's a select few of us have been invited back by Bobby Ferguson for their afternoon training. So yes, we had to be there. So we were there, and the warm up was just keeping the ball up in the air, just like keep you up. Although I was better then than I was in the keep you up here.
You're still on the leaderboard, Butch, but only just.
Well, thanks very much, Mark, for that. Anyway, So Frank, we're trying to keep it up, and Frank kept dropping it. So he says, Bobby Ferguson gets on to Frank. He goes, keep it up. So Frank's, I'm trying, keep it up. No, go higher, Frank. You're useless for Yallop. You're useless. So then Frank just got the ball and 2 or 3 touches and just smashed it right up in the air. And he said to Bobby, "Is that beeping high enough for you, Bobby?" And then Bobby Ferguson just said, "It is." He says, "And pick your ball up and just go in, and I'll see you in my office afterwards." So that was a story with Frank, and Frank was, because he was quite a rebel, Frank, wasn't he? He was at times he was very, very straight-laced, and then he could be very outspoken, but he was right, he really was.
Yeah. Well, he tells us there was also a story. He said that you told him at one time, Frank, you got to stand up for yourself because you're just going to continue on being the punch bag.
Yes.
So there was another situation where he's right back and Bobby's standing on the left back flank on the other touch line, and Frank puts one into the striker's feet. I don't know who it would have been. It might have been Gatesy back then. But anyway, he stops play and he's like, Frank, put it in behind. So the play continues, and next thing you know, Frank, he puts one in behind, and Bobby stops it. And he goes, Frank, put it in the feet. So Frank goes, yeah, is there anything else while you're at it, Bobby? And Bobby says, you can know what he's like. But the steam coming out of his ears. Play just stopped, and he's just coming at Frank, and Frank was just a melting ice cream cone. I mean, oh my God. I mean, I remember when I had a story with Ferguson. We were playing in an FA Youth Cup game, and I got clattered, and it was something silly I did for sure, and I'm knocked out basically, and I'm laying in the dressing room, and Bobby comes in, and I actually thought I'm standing there, I'm a bit blurry eyed, and I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking he's going to say something kind or something like, oh, you were all right, lad, or anything like that. And he just goes, Canadian Redwood, snoozing means losing.
Snoozing means losing.
Snoozing means losing, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, he said something similar to us.
Remember he put those little sayings all over the dressing room?
Yeah.
He would put literally snoozing means losing, and he who dares wins or something. And then there's the puppet in the corner we called Hangman's Corner because nobody lasted long there. Remember Alan Sunderland was in there.
It's like our budgie.
Trevor Putney was in there.
He didn't last long.
Was he the original Ted Lasso then, with his Believe sign that we've got up on the studio wall up behind our own Ted Lasso here, do you think?
You know what? He would be the original Ted Lasso, except his personality was a complete U-turn from Ted Lasso.
Oh dear.
He was very volatile. Fergie.
Oh yes.
Very volatile.
He used to, but Fergie liked me, so I was quite lucky there. So when he put these signs up, we came in early we had a pre-match lunch, and I came in early to the home dressing room, and I saw these signs up. So I thought I'm gonna put a sign up. So then I went home for the next home game, and I made a sign, and I wrote on it, and because he had all these wonderful sayings, as Craig saying, or motivational things, I just put one up. I said, "Have a curry and let the world fall out of your bottom." So I put that up. So I thought this would raise the spirit of the lads. And of course Bobby Ferguson comes in. Who wrote that? Who wrote that? And I had to say, it was me, Gaff. It was me. And because he liked me so much, he couldn't give me a rolligan as such. And he just walked out. So I got away with it. But I think I was about the only one. And it was a good job Frank didn't put it up, because Frank would have been dead by now.
And he liked you.
And he liked me, yeah. He did like me, yeah. He liked me just a little bit more than he liked the other players.
I like the way you all do impressions of him. Craig was doing an impression of him, but I've heard plenty of other players who play.
I can't do it without swearing.
No,
yeah, they all do it. When they tell a story, they all do an impression.
It's ingrained. It's ingrained. I just heard Craig say about Bobby, and his accent, it just sends shivers down your spine. It really does.
He kicked me in the throat one day, Mark.
Really?
I'm trying. Yeah, we're having a five-a-side, and on the far side, you know where the marquee is now, there used to be a grass five-a-side pitch there, and because cars parked in there on the match day, it used to be rutted, and there used to be puddles and everything in the winter. We're having a five-a-side, and Fergie was playing, and I tackled him and knocked him over, and he went in one of these puddles, fell over in the puddle. Oh dear. So as the play carried on, the next time the ball's bouncing, I've gone to head it, and he's actually kicked me in the throat. And this is on a Friday before a game, so it's kicked me in the throat. That's a bit vicious, that. And then as we walked off the pitch afterwards, he said to me, Osman, that was a good tackle, but don't forget, I can kick you. And that was it.
And he did.
Sorry, boss.
And he certainly did. Yeah. What was it like for you, Craig, when you first arrived here? You say Bobby made you very welcome. Your mum and dad were here, and then you left in digs. What was that like? A young man around town.
Well, it was a lot different than would be now, just because the world's a lot smaller and you can do things like we're doing now, and keep contact with your family and friends. But I remember my landlady had an actual lock on the phone. It was about £1 a minute to phone Canada at that time, and she was so afraid that I would be homesick and I'd be phoning my parents and racking up £100 on an hour.
But she loved you.
It was, pardon me?
She loved you, didn't she? If you were paying her that money.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, she was an absolute character, actually. And then Halloween just passed, and it reminded me that I remember the first time I was there, I was a little bit homesick. We were watching one of the 4 channels that were on television at that time. So it was probably Snooker or EastEnders or something. And all of a sudden I hear this knock on the door and I hear this trick or treat. And I'm like, what? Halloween? I never seen anything around the town or anything like that. And she's like, oh, and I'm like, oh, do you have some candy for them or something? And she goes, look, I've got this. And she goes to the door, she opens it up, and I'm looking over her shoulder. And she goes, piss off, you little beggars. Oh, man. Oh, dear.
It wasn't.
My shoulders just dropped. I just went back into the
It wasn't.
classic set.
Yeah, I was to say it wasn't Bobby Ferguson's wife Anne, was it at all? No.
No kidding. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Well, she didn't take any crap. I know that. She gave me a bit of rope but she wouldn't let me bring girls back to my place. That was an absolute no-no, and I never did it except for once.
And here she is, Craig. She remembers you well.
Yeah, be careful.
But what was it like when you were making your debut for town? How did you feel?
Oh, wow. I mean, just playing with the U team and being under Peter Trevivian at the time. He was one of my most memorable, if not my most memorable coaches. He was just so good as not only a coach, but as a mentor, as, dealing with, anything issues, social issues, anything that you had outside the club. He was just an absolute gem of a guy, and he couldn't ask for a better youth coach than him. And Brian Owen as well was part of that setup as well, moving into the reserve. So playing for that youth team, and I remember when I turned pro from, making my 25 pounds a week YTS, which was a lot of money, it seemed at the time. Certainly been able to, not like now, but used to get a good weekend out of that and save about £5. Remember that, lads? I mean, geez whiz. So anyway, back to my story about playing. So going through the U team and then reserves, and then making my debut against Stoke, obviously the second division at that time, in the opening game of the season. I had a good spell at Colchester on loan for a couple months at the end of that season. Roger Brown was the manager then, a big fella. And then in the off season, I felt pretty good. I was actually, just playing in the Football League system in the 4th tier with Colchester was such an experience and certainly a growing experience as a player to play in competitive football. And I think we see more of that now with some of the players going on loan. It really is a great experience. So in the off season, I remember getting a call in Vancouver, and they had sold John Holsworth to Oldham, I believe, and they said you were going to start next season. So I wish they didn't tell me so early, because for the rest of the summer I was an absolute mess.
And the time you pulled on
when it came around to the game itself, the guys were incredibly supportive going into it. Frank, and I remember Romeo Zondervan and these guys and everybody, John Wark, they made me feel really comfortable, and they certainly protected me over that early parts of the season. And just as a young goalkeeper, I remember just those incredible ups and downs. And I think you guys would admit to that too. When you're younger, you do have those roller coasters, and in football, you got to even it out a little bit. Otherwise, it'll just eat you alive, and you just can't get any sleep at home or anything like that. And that's what it was when things were going sideways a little bit. So learning how to deal with that over a period of time. But certainly in the early days, every single moment you just dissected yourself, and if you lost the match, well, then your whole week almost was ruined. So you got to deal with that a bit better.
Craig, are you aware that you were one of only 13 foreign players that lined up on the first day of the Premier League season?
Yeah, that's incredible. I never even thought about that. I remember, I think it was the Sun newspaper who reporter phoned, I think a year or two later, and was talking about that. And then it was starting to change an awful lot. And then even in the second to last game of the season, we played West Ham against Liverpool. And I think in that match, there were 17, 19 different nationalities actually that took part in that particular match, and that's how much it changed. And even my loan spell at Chelsea with, Zola and Vialli, and Hullet was the manager, and LeBouf, and I mean we were just about fielded a team in '97 that was completely foreign at Chelsea. So it was changing and changing really, really quickly. So yeah, so it amazes me, and I think a lot of those 13 guys, there was a few goalkeepers there. There's probably 4 or 5 of them were goalkeepers.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the season that got you up to the inaugural Premier League, which was a fantastic season? You had some great players around you, Kiwomya, Dazelle. It was a great season, and winning that promotion at Oxford. Any of you there at Oxford for that? I was. It was just a fantastic pitch invasion. It was just great. Can you remember that, Craig, winning that?
What, are you out of your mind? Of course I do. I remember like yesterday. It was an incredible thing. And I remember just before that, too, as the games were building up, we had a game at Bristol City. And I think we could have wrapped it up by then, and we didn't. And that was the longest drive home. I remember this. And all our supporters that went down, there was thousands went down there to try to, because we thought we could clinch it. But so there was a bit of pressure leading up to that. But yeah, I remember it really, really well. So exciting. The dressing room celebrations and everything. I think that's the last actual title we've won, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. And what a season. I mean, the other thing about that season was there was so little expectation, was there, at the beginning of the campaign? No one really kind of thought Ipswich were going to get anywhere, but it grew as the season went on, didn't it?
It really did. I think we had a great spell around Christmas time. We won 9 or 10 out of 11 games or something like that really threw us up to the top and put us in a great position. So yeah, and a great manager. John Law was a fantastic man and a terrific manager. And I remember I could see why he did so well at West Ham and over his career. Another guy that was very progressive. Like he came out of that sort of what the West Ham Academy and then built his way up in the coaching system there, kind of like Kieran McKenna did sort of his career. He's still young, but he's been around in the coaching realm, I guess, for about 15 years, right? So retiring early can sometimes help you in that sort of thing. But yeah, the coaching is a big thing about that. So.
And we talked about cup runs, didn't we, earlier? The cup run that took you to the game at Anfield was another sort of big aspect of that season, wasn't it?
Yeah, that game where we that was super windy day. We played against Liverpool, and that was something, because I remember that was the first time I played against Bruce Grobbelaar, who was at the Vancouver Whitecaps. So when I was a young lad and we had season tickets at the Whitecaps, they were a big deal, as they are again now. It was massive. Peter Beardsley was there. He came out of that system, went back across after starting at a lower division team. Bruce Grobbelaar as well got picked up by Liverpool. So Bruce Grobbelaar was sort of my idol, and I had pictures with him when I was a young lad at the Empire Stadium in Vancouver. So playing against him was just incredible, and standing next to those great players of that Liverpool time. And super windy day. I don't think we played it's windy a lot at Port Monroe, but nothing like this day. I think the signs were ripping off the side and everything else, and Worky hit the crossbar, and overall we should have probably won that match and ended up going back to Anfield for the replay, which was just an epic match. Unfortunately, we ended up on the wrong side of it, but it was a terrific match.
And certainly your teammates in that particular era, some interesting names to pick out for you. Chris Kiwomya, Jason Dazelle, Paul Goddard, of course, Phil Whelan, Tomo with his left foot. I mean, it was a good, solid team, wasn't it?
It was really, really solid. A great group of guys. I remember, Tomo's left foot was special, really special. I mean, I don't know what he would do today with the balls they have, but I remember I was struggling with a bit of a hamstring, and he was taking goal kicks one day, and I think Chris Kiwomya might have got in straight off the goal kick, and I haven't seen anybody strike the ball since Ederson now at Man City. He strikes the ball incredibly well, and that's an unbelievable weapon for a goalkeeper to have, especially in the modern day when they're playing out of the back, and to have that opportunity to strike one long like that. So Tomo was amazing. Frank was, the best. He was from the West Coast, newest minister. So he had really taken me under his wing. We became best friends. Dave Linigan in the center back, Whelan. Yeah, Paul Goddard came in. He was signed by John Lyle. He was sort of on the downside of his career, but filled a hole for us and played really well when he had to. Chris Kwame, a very good friend of mine, and he came over several times to North America. He's got to come over again shortly if he can. He even followed us down to Los Angeles. Had some great stories there, which take too long for this show, I'm sure. But
I'm sure we got time for one or two.
Yeah, well, and then Jason Dizelle. We in the youth team, we went over. I remember we played. Daly and Atkinson was in our youth team as well. We had a really good youth team. And we went over to this tournament. We were invited because Arsenal were supposed to go, and for some reason they weren't going to take a team. So we ended up in this tournament in France, in Lille, and Porto were there, and Benfica, and Dinamo Kiev, Dinamo Moscow. They had Santiago de Chile, Inter Milan, Barcelona. We ended up playing them in the semifinal and beating them. So we ended up winning this tournament against Benfica with all these great players, and all of them really did really, really well, obviously, and some of them didn't so much. And I think that was a little bit of a shocker for me as a young lad to think that I can't believe all 11 of these players in this team aren't going to go on to long careers. And it's just a reality check really quickly in your career when, even that was probably 3 or 4 of us that went on to have good careers, or lengthy ones anyway. And then I thought there would be a higher percentage from that team. Unfortunately, there wasn't.
What about going up into the Premier League, the first Premier League? How was that? Because it was brand spanking new, wasn't it, for you and everybody else?
It was, but I think you guys remember when it turned over. It felt like just a name change for the most part. It wasn't like football is just beginning in 1992, as it sometimes seems these days, because they talk about Premier League statistics, and it's like, I don't know why that is, and it's a shame really that that's sort of become that. But at the time, it was just a name change. It was a brand change. It was more TV money distributed against the richer clubs, basically in the top flight. But other than that, yeah, it became more, and that's why a few years later they talked about 13 players that started the Premier League as foreign players. At the time, it didn't seem a big deal to me at all.
Craig, because you went up to the Premier League, did your wages go up about 50 times, or did they stay the same?
Well, it is Ipswich Town we're talking about here. Right? So the answer to that question is no. But I think back on that, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was probably comparable, I think, I remember John Wark saying, those wages were about comparable to what he made at the highest level at Liverpool. So, every generation is always a generation too early in sports. And I think that's certainly the case with you guys, myself. But at the time, it felt like you were at top of the world, even making £25 a week in the youth team. I was like, what? They're paying me to play football? This is amazing. My landlady was making £35, but whatever.
But Craig, as being the only goalkeeper we've had on the show so far, can you talk me through how the goalkeepers are dealing with playing out from the back and are you a big advocate of that, being such a good ball player yourself?
I am a big advocate. I'm a really big advocate of it. I love the way they're doing it. It certainly has changed the game. But I think the biggest part of that is it wasn't that like your old team back in the 80s, late 70s and 80s are certainly capable of playing that football. And you did so when you played at Wembley. But they don't have baubles anymore. These hybrid pitches are absolutely snooker tables. And that changes everything right there. And then when being able to play inside the box, to be able to keep control and spread the game and spread the play out is you're able to do that consistently week in, week out because the pitches are so good.
Yeah, but you're given the go-ahead by your coach as well. That's what he wants you to do. He's encouraging you to do that. He's encouraging your centre-halves to get on the ball in their own 6-yard box as often as possible and play out from that point. And we've seen it time and time again this season where they've scored goals just by starting with possession of the ball within the 6-yard box and being able to play it out, and suddenly they get the numerical advantage and they've got the pace to score good goals off very good football.
Yeah, exactly. And then your proximity when you lose the ball is usually pretty close to so you can swarm in and really get the ball back really quickly. So yeah, it's completely changed it. If you have the confidence, and that's right. There's not many managers back certainly when I was playing in the 80s and early 90s that were giving you that sort of green light to keep possession.
No,
where you saw internationally that this was the way things were moving along. But again, you need the surface to play on it, and a lot of managers were scared to death to play in their final third when the pitches were bobbly and one could come up and hit you in the knee or something. So it was always, that play it in their third. But it was an ugly game during the I thought to watch. I don't think it was great in the 80s and 90s where it became really direct, and there was some success from teams like Wimbledon, for instance, that got a great deal of success from playing a very direct game of football. But it wasn't everybody had 6'5". I mean, Terry, you guys, Russ, you guys were getting squashed by guys all the time. Remember, the elbows were flying every single time. Get it in the mixer, and it was a really tough game, and you knew it after you played 90 minutes of that football. But it wasn't particularly attractive sometimes.
Talking of ugly games, I've got to mention that very close game you had at Manchester United. When I think the scoreboard actually lost count, didn't it, several times? You got to talk about that.
That really is the elephant in the room. That one, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to mention it.
You said you weren't going to mention it.
Well,
Terry.
I've got to mention it. I've got to mention it. As we've had the good bits, let's have the bad bits now. What do you think? What happened there? What happened there?
Terry, I thought we were friends.
Craig, I think you should have done better on the 5th, I think.
And the 8th should have been disallowed.
Oh, it's gone.
Yeah, everybody goes, it could have been like 15. It's like, oh, that's really heartwarming. Yeah, that's great. But on the day, I thought it was 10. When I walked off the pitch, I actually thought it was 10. I'm like, I'm the first keeper. I don't know if since 1904 to concede 10. It was just a disaster. And when it came off, it was 9. I was like, oh, I'll do the press conference. That's
Oh dear, that is the one record that we need to see the back of at some point, don't we? Really?
Well, it's been close. Teams have been
Getting
close.
there.
It's become something from my angle where when I've been retired for this long, everybody that knows you is now got to be in their 30s or 40s and later. They don't remember you for anything else, so it kind of keeps me in the fray a little bit as far as people remembering me for something. Although, as you know, these one-off games or whatever, and just the experience of playing at Manchester United. I mean, I don't know if I'd want to go back and get beat 9, but if I could go back and experience that again at some level and maybe lose 4 or 5, I think I'd do it. It's like the experience of playing in these places is just absolutely incredible, and it's memorable, and you just remember. Sometimes you can remember details of games going back 30 years. It's incredible.
I remember one game at Manchester United where Bobby Ferguson was the manager, and before the game you had to go and hand over the team sheet to the referee with the opposing manager. So I think it was Ron Atkinson, and the captain went in there at the same time. So I went in with Bobby Ferguson. Brian Robson was there with Ron Atkinson. Swapped the team sheets over with the referee. Bobby Ferguson came out looking at the Manchester United team, head down, walked straight back down the corridor to the changing room. I had a quick chat with Ron Atkinson and Brian Robson, and Bobby Ferguson dived into the change room, started talking about their players and saying how bad they were and how useless they were, and they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. The centre forward was hopeless. Viv Anderson was no good. He'd gone past it. And Remy Moses, he was useless. Get him on his left foot. He can't play. And he looked up and he was actually in the Manchester United changing room.
Well, it must have worked because we won 2-1, didn't we? We won 2-1. Unbelievable stuff.
That's typical of Fergie, though. That was
typical. Craig, we've got some mentions for you on our socials. Lots of love for you, I have to say. You've been really, really popular on our socials. Dave said Craig is one of my favourite town keepers. Absolute quality on and off the pitch. Stuart, he'd be in the top Ipswich goalkeepers list for me. And Benno's been in touch, and 1 or 2 others. There used to be a chant coming out, if you remember, what's the score? And you used to do something with your hand, didn't you, just behind your back, giving us 2 or 3 fingers for whatever the score was. Do you remember that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, I do. Yeah, I remember one that I think we were beating Port Vale 5-0. It was on a windy, wet night, and they're asking, doing this, Craigie, what's the score? And I was, held up 5 fingers, did my thing, whatever. And then a minute later, I got a pass back, and I dwelled on the ball and got caught in possession. And they score, and they're like, Craigie, what's the score? They were absolutely giving it to me. It was like, all right, 5-1.
Another one here from Suffolk and Ordinary. I wonder if you remember the song from the North Stand where we asked you to show us your bum. And I think you kind of managed that, didn't you, at the time as well? Weren't you sort of just adjusting things to please the crowd?
Yeah, I did. I remember that. I did that. Yeah, they did that a lot. They actually chanted that more than once. And well, back then I had a bum worth looking at.
You can't do that now. That'd be an offence, wouldn't it?
Probably would. Yeah,
you can these days.
You'd be in prison for 10 years now if you did that.
Not so big ITFC Dave's been in touch. Really looking forward to this show. Watched and loved every episode so far. This is going to be amazing. My goalkeeping hero. So, Craig, there is so much love, isn't there, everybody, for Craig Forrest? There really is here. Are we going to see you at any point in person? Are you going to come over?
Yeah, I hope to get over this in the season in the new year sometime. Yeah, I really look forward to trying to get over there as quickly as I can. I know my daughter's heading over this Christmas, so it's amazing because she was born in Ipswich Hospital, so she has family there. It's awesome.
She a tractor girl?
Pardon me?
Is she a tractor girl?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she absolutely is. Of course. What else could she be?
Well, just checking. You never know in this world.
Yeah,
Before you go, can I just read through this off the internet? And this just sort of solidifies where you are in the quality of Ipswich Town players. Canadian International Player of the Year, 94 and 2000. Ipswich Town Player of the Year, 94-95. Ipswich Town Player of the Year, 94-95. CONCACAF Gold Cup Best Player 2000, CONCACAF Gold Cup Most Valuable Player 2000, CONCACAF Gold Cup Most Valuable Goalkeeper 2000, CONCACAF Gold Cup Best 11 2000, Canadian Soccer Hall of Fame inducted 2007, Canada's Sports Hall of Fame inducted in 2015. I think that deserves a big round of applause. And for everything you've done at Ipswich Town. What a fantastic career, Craig. When you look back, amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing, and that the most important thing, what actually gives me the most excitement is when you hear from the fans and the people that you came across, especially the young lads that are mascots and things like that, and young girls that come out with their mascots. I think that's the most important thing, giving it back, because I remember Bruce Grobelar and having that access to him and what it meant to me as a kid growing up as a player, and that these young people that have access to you guys and see that and believe in themselves that they can actually reach those goals and stuff like that. That's the most important things. But it really is about the fans and leaving something lasting and memorable for them. And if they speak highly about me doing that, I never turned away from an autograph or anything like that. And I always loved interacting with all the young people or even just people in general. So thanks a lot for that. I really, really appreciate it. And I think that's brilliant. Thank you.
And also, as well, you talked about the fans. You were voted by the fans into the Canadian Best Ever 11. So you're into the top team. So that takes some feat. 56 caps for your country as well, with the most clean sheets ever, I think. So, yeah, you're a hell of a goalkeeper. Hell of a keeper.
Fantastic.
And also, between you and Jason DeVos, managed to carry that enormous Gold Cup trophy. I don't think I've ever seen a bigger trophy than that. That's quite some feat in itself, isn't it?
He didn't drop it, did he?
No, but I had help. Yeah, we needed 2 of us to lift that thing. Yeah, it's massive. But you know what North America's like.
We'll say goodbye properly in a moment, Craig. Stay with us, but we've got a few other bits and pieces to do. Ordinarily, it would be our Keep It Up challenge sponsored by our friends at Ginger Pickle, but it's a little bit difficult to get the football to Craig in Canada at the moment, so no Keep It Up challenge this week. Don't forget, though, if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does make a difference. And check out our website as well, lifesapitch.tv. We've got mugs, which are being demonstrated by my colleagues here that you can buy on the website. There are T-shirts as well. And our big do at the end of November, raising money for the cancer campaign in Suffolk and the Ex-Players Association, is at Venue 16, 30th of November. We'll be filming Life's a Pitch TV on the big stage. Steve McCall is going to be there. Is he going to be our special guest on Life's a Pitch? 2-course dinner. Auction heads and tails, all that kind of thing. And then a question of sport, which I'll be hosting for the second half. But your team is?
Steve McCall and George Burley.
Okay. And Russell, your team is?
The skipper, Luke Chambers.
Use your microphone.
I was doing a Mark Murphy there for
Thank
me.
you very much. Yes, yes.
Oh, yes.
Leeds United, I know.
Touche.
Yes, yes. Your team is, Russell.
Eddie Gray.
My team is, and will be on the night, Luke Chambers and Ian Westlake.
Ooh.
Very good.
So get your tickets. Lifesapitch.tv is where you get your tickets.
Who's the referee?
from.
Are you the question master?
I'm the question master and the referee.
Well, that
My
means our
position
team will lose then.
I'm
will
a bookmaker.
be final, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Time for the town news in brief, sponsored by John Keeble Cars of Bramford with Phil Ham from twtd.co.uk. I see you've got another Paddington in front of you
Yeah,
as
I've
well
got
now.
so many Paddingtons. They're probably going to be sort of, the whole thing will be kind of covered in Paddingtons eventually. Yeah, news hats on, not forgotten this week. Courtesy of the North American Supporters Club, which is appropriate for this week, isn't it? Well, it's not an enormous amount of news at the moment, is there? Because the games are coming so thick and fast. The main kind of thrust is the games. But I did notice Sam Morsey has not been included in a 9-man overseas list ahead of Egypt's November fixtures, which obviously is a bit disappointing for him because obviously he wants caps. But I think it sort of decreases the chances of his involvement in the Africa Cup of Nations in January, which would be a big blow for Town if he were to go away for what could be a month, because Egypt are a decent side. They could well progress. So, of course, he has been included on that list on a number of occasions and then not been included in the end of the squad ultimately, so they could do the opposite this time around. But I think it is looking less likely that he'll be involved in that in January, which, as I say, is positive for Town, if not necessarily for Sam. Wes Burns, doing well at the moment. Kieran McKenna talking about him last night after the game. He's on the grass. He's obviously had this shoulder injury picked up with Wales, but not in sort of contact training yet. But he says he should be involved after the November international break, which is positive. But we've got very few injuries at the moment, haven't we? Look at the situation.
Don't say that.
Well, I think this is it's a very big positive that they've obviously kind
Kiss of death.
Well,
Oh,
I
dear.
don't believe in this magical thinking.
But we've got a big enough squad to cope, surely.
We have, but I think it's a positive that from sort of 2 or 3 years ago when we had players that were out almost constantly, the likes of David McGoldrick and 1 or 2 others, and now we've got, aside from Lee Evans, who obviously hurt his knee and has undergone surgery, that's it for injuries. Aside from Panucci Kamara, unfortunately, has suffered another injury whilst on loan at Charlton. Pulled up with a hamstring problem in their 3-2 win at Wigan earlier in the week. He'd only just returned from 8 games out with a foot problem.
So apart from Wes Burns,
Yeah, well, he's not here. This is the thing. But his contract's up at the end of the season, so this is obviously a big blow for him, really, because I think he needed a good season and a good run of games with Charlton in order to kind of further his Town career. So Town have got an additional year's option, but I think time may be running out for Panucci Kamara at Town, unfortunately, after a season last year when he made 1 start and 3 substitute appearances. So I think his time at Town may be coming to an end. More positively in loan news, keeper Nick Hayes, sort of 4th choice, played the last 5 games to Southend on loan, and manager Kevin Mayer wants him to extend his spell, which is a big positive for him. I think at 24, Nick Hayes really needs games, but he's getting them at Southend, and he's doing very well. Whether they can extend it or not, because they've got a transfer embargo at Southend, because they obviously have financial trouble. But positive for him. I think you probably worked with him, didn't you, Terry?
Who?
Nick Hayes.
Yes.
Yeah, decent keeper. We're talking about keepers today.
Yes, he's not as good as Craig, but he's pretty decent. Yeah, nice guy. Yeah, I think you should do more talk about how Norwich are doing really badly.
Norwich, well, yes. And in other news, Norwich are doing really badly.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Do you think the canary, the dead canary above my head? I think we should start deflating that, don't you? A little bit each week, perhaps, as they kind of drop down the league. I mean, it's. Yeah, I mean, it's dead anyway, but we might as well just deflate it a little bit, perhaps.
They're really letting themselves down, aren't they?
They are letting themselves down.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
You're
But
right.
I mean, it's remarkable at this stage of the season. I think we're double points with them, aren't we? 34 points and they've got 17, which is, we
they're
wouldn't
really
have
looking forward to
dreamt of
playing
that
us,
at
aren't
this
they?
stage
That's
of
the
season.
sort of news you should bring to us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Instead of that rubbish about them
well done,
uninjured
Phil.
players, for goodness sake. Come
Let's
on.
bring Craigie
You
back in.
depressed us.
Craigie,
We're on a
Craigie.
high. We're on a high. You blooming depress us now. Come
Let's
on.
bring Craig back. Local
gonna-
derbies, Craig. Any memories of those?
Derbies. Oh yeah, remember them all. Absolutely. From the very first one, I don't think that was the Milk Cup game. We wouldn't want to bring up a game, but yeah, right then when I experienced that as a fan, as a youth player, that was the first time I knew what you're into every single time when you played. Very important, obviously, and it's always one of those games you just have to win for your supporters.
You can feel that as a player, can you?
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's intense everywhere you go. I mean, not just talking about the football ground. When you're just around town, you're shopping, you're doing whatever you do in everyday life. People are always bringing it up. So it's something that's really important. And if you lose, you're obviously going to hear about that too. You might want to stay at home for a few days.
I think
It's very important, isn't it? Capacity crowd. It's the one.
One of the derbies I remember most is the '92 one at Carrow Road when they were kind of in their relative pomp. Obviously, it wasn't as pomp in the way that we've had pomp.
That's better.
You like that?
That's a bit better, yeah.
But
yeah.
and it was a terrific victory, 2-0. Was that one you remember well?
Oh yeah. I remember all those games really well. All of them, yeah. We had another one in the Premier League, I think, at Portman Road. I remember the highlight that I can remember that really is that for whatever reason, the lines that were painted, it was pouring rain, and the lines were literally disappearing. Do you remember that?
Yeah, was that the 3-1 when Jason scored a couple of goals? Was that one?
It might have been,
Just
yeah.
before
It might have
Christmas,
been.
I
I think
think.
we did okay, but it was. I remember it was just the lines. I couldn't even see the edge of the box. It was just unplayable virtually. You're just playing on just a big field of grass. It was quite something.
You were
Craig-
talking. You were sorry, Russ.
Sorry.
You were talking earlier on, Craig, about how the pitches these days are like a snooker table, and we don't have the little divots. And of course, we can all remember just how important the divot was, can't we?
Yeah.
With Robert Ullathorne and Brian Gunn all those years ago. That's just one of my bestest ever memories.
It's just what I was going to say as well. Priceless, wasn't it? Highlight of the
Great
derbies.
minds think alike, yeah.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. And that is coming up, of course, very soon. Let's have a look and see what's happened on this day in history with Russ, sponsored by Fred Olsen Logistics.
Right, from Dan Botton's Ipswich Town on this day, the entries are, and there's a few similarities here, or could compare to with our guest. Not the date, though. Saturday, the 2nd of November, 1935.
Oh, I remember that well.
That is
Yeah.
a long time ago. That was even before the Premier League.
Is that the time or the year?
That was the time.
1935?
1935. What's that? 25-8.
That's right.
Jock Henderson became the first town keeper to be sent off. Any other town keepers been sent off at all?
I
we
can
remember
remember
anybody?
one. I can remember
Yeah,
one.
any?
Adrian Littlejohn. Does that name spring to mind, Craig?
Yes.
Oh.
Very, very good. Yeah, I put him up like a helicopter.
I did it with style.
It was the biggest player on the pitch against the smallest player on the pitch, wasn't it? At pace.
Oh, he was so fast. I think the game had just started. It was like 5 or 6 minutes in, maybe not even.
I think it was 2
and
or
the ball
something,
came
yeah.
over. And I thought I could get to it first, and I was like, oh, I'm never going to get there. So I've absolutely clattered him. And I was watching it recently, and I think Alan Hansen was doing the color or doing the halftime show, and they were debating. He really didn't think it was a sending off. And I was like, wow, like in the modern day, I would get 10 games for that.
You'd probably get 10 years if you were.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jock Henderson, just prior to Craig Forrest being sent off as well, he was the first town goalkeeper to be sent off as the Blues lost 2-0 at Yarmouth Town. That's a bit of a fixture. He was shown his marching orders for retaliation, not just wiping the centre forward out. Saturday, the 2nd of November, 1991. again, Craig, I think you might be involved in this fixture. Goals from John Walk and Gavin Johnson in a 2-2 draw at Leicester City. So that would be the old Filbert Street. And that resulted in a 6th consecutive draw for John Lyle's troops. So that's a coincidence, isn't it, on this day?
It is. I remember Filbert Street really well. My distant relatives on one side of my family come from Leicester Foss.
Well, look, it's been great to have you on the show, Craig. It really has. And you've been our first keeper, and you've been a great guest. And we want to thank you for your loyal service to Ipswich Town, everything that you've achieved in a fantastic career. Now you're doing this kind of thing so the microphone's not a strange thing for you to hold these days.
No, I started getting more used to talking. It keeps me out of trouble. But I just we'll give a shout out. I know your last show you had, or certainly a couple of weeks ago, you had Pat Gobbold on, and I talk about players come and go, and we like to talk to former players and whatnot. But it was great to listen to her because people like her are really the fabric of the club, and they're the ones that are consistent all the way through. But they're really the stars of the show. I mean, it's absolutely amazing how long she's been around Ipswich Town Football Club. It's just incredible. It was good to see her, and she looks really well.
What a smoothie.
Yeah, well done, Craig.
Everybody loves
I
Pat.
always like Pat.
We're going to get her back for part 2, I think. Did you all watch that one? Part 3 and 4,
So,
perhaps.
Craig, you were saying you do a podcast. What is the podcast if Town fans want to ever listen to it?
Oh, it's called Footy Prime. So it's Footy_Prime on X or Twitter, formerly Twitter. So yeah, so we're on there, and we're on Apple and Spotify and anywhere where you can get your podcasts. I think you can actually pick it up over there. So it's a little bit more centric to over here, but we cover a lot with the Premier League. We talk a lot of smack and just nonsense as well, which is always nice. And we try to mix it up a little bit, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, look, it's been a lot of fun having you here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Forrest.
Hey! Craigie, show us your bum, show us your bum, show us your bum. Craigie, show us your bum.
Not these days.
No, he's not. No, he's there
not.
still.
I think he's
You
run
don't
away.
want to see my ass now.
That is quote of the night, isn't it, really? Craig Forrest. Thank you, Capacity Crowd. You've been amazing. Thank you, top team here. Next week, we're going to be joined by James Scowcroft on the show. Scoey's going to be here. Don't forget to keep in touch on our socials. That's Life's a Pitch TV on Facebook, Insta, and X. On YouTube, please like and subscribe. It really does help us tremendously. And don't forget to check out the shirts, the mugs, and tickets for our big event at the end of November, lifesapitch.tv. Thanks again to our main sponsors, DPS Tech, also supported by All About Hearing, marketing company Ginger Pickle, Forward Floors, Come Hither Design, the Hudson Group, Sound 4 Pro Audio, Fred Olsen Logistics, John Keeble Cars in Bramford, and now the Dove in St Helens Street in Ipswich. That's us done for tonight. Up the town. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.